So, did you see the title for the space?
Yes, yeah. Hollywood Resurrection.
Yeah, so first we want to talk about Easter and the nature of
Yeah.
Easter, what Easter's all about. And then we want to talk about Hollywood and what's going on with Hollywood. Because I'm doing an article on this right now on MediaMoses.com. But, oh, by the way, this is Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft. Just so you know. Intro music. This is Cultural Warfare. And this is Rebecca Croft as well. Hello, Rebecca.
Hello.
I invited a few other people, but nobody shows up yet. So we'll once we get to our 25th episode, someone's going to start showing up. Besides just us. Anyway, I was writing an article on how Film Threat talked about a film industry watch list and how they made an article on how Hollywood is suffering right now because there's not enough people sending out, hiring. There's not enough studios hiring. There's not enough Hollywood types hiring. So the below the line people, Film Threat called them the below the line people, but they were people like producers and executive producers and all kinds of people who, are not having their projects greenlit or whatever. So I wouldn't say it's just below the line people. It's above the line people too. But they're just not afraid of asking for help online. But basically, they are saying that they haven't had work in 6 months, up to a year even. Obviously, some of this is because of the strike. It's going to just inherently reduce the amount of productions happening.
Yeah.
But you could still do things. You can still accomplish things. You could even still make money, but you do have to be far more, strategic about how you do it. And you have to honor all your agreements and all this stuff. So, but there's a lot of people who are suffering right now. Much of it is because of the strike, like I said, but it isn't just the fact that during the strike you can't work if you're a certain kind of person in Hollywood, which is kind of most people. It isn't just that you can't work because of the strike happening now. It's because of the outcome of the strike. And a lot of people don't know this. Even people in the industry are not paying attention. They just assume, well, things will get back to normal now. I'll be able to get my job now. The strike's over. Sorry, no, that's not actually true. The strike actually created a resolution on the part of studios to hire less people and to do less productions and to actually engage in even more runaway production and also engage in just buying foreign IP as opposed to making our own IP, making our own films. So you're actually seeing the result of the strike has actually led to getting less work and making this the norm so you don't work. They want to make this the norm now so you don't work. So, and AI hasn't helped much because they've actually approved a certain measure of AI usage, which means that, like a lot of people that were working on graphics or working on writing or working on what have you, previs work, a lot of that stuff is going to go the way of the buffalo, and you're going to be left in the lurch because of the way the strikes were. And I'm sorry, but I blame all the strike leaders. I blame all of them. They're not really working for their people. They have sweetheart deals of their own, and they also have to think of the studios and the studios' interests, because these are always compromises. That they will come home and bring home the bacon and be like, look what I did! I brought home the wildebeest. I slayed the dragon in Hollywood, and we won the strike. All this stuff. They'll say all this stuff, and it's always a compromise, which means they didn't slay anybody, and in many ways they got slayed. And they got their arm twisted and said, okay, I'll budge. And so there's compromising happening all the time like this, and the truth is they're not. You can see the outcome now that they actually did not do a great job at fighting for the rights of their union workers. Um, so the title of this episode obviously is Easter and Hollywood Resurrection, and what I'm talking about is the fact that there's a difference between the story of Easter and the story of the film industry. And in order for the film industry to resurrect, so to speak, a lot of changes are going to happen because these changes don't come easy.
Yeah.
You know, Easter is not about, let's go through what Easter really is, right?
Yeah.
Easter is not about chocolate and bunnies. It's not about some pagan thing about how fertility goddess or something nonsense. Nobody in the Christian church like took on some kind of pagan Ishtar worship thing. No, this was happening before all of that. And doesn't it come from Passover, honey?
That sounds very familiar. Yeah,
Yeah.
because Jesus was celebrating Passover with his disciples on the night that he was arrested.
Right.
Yeah.
And then obviously what happens is he gets crucified, Good Friday, which is what's happening right now.
Today.
And he suffers for all of our sins. He becomes the spotless lamb that the Jews talked about for millennia in their prophecies. And then there was a sort of a culling of the Jewish people, which is the people who see all these things in the signs. They see the star in the east, right? There's people who, the wise men from the east, they know of this prophecy. They come to worship Jesus on his birth. Then similar signs happen in his death. And then 3 days later, which is also prophesied, he resurrects. And, Paul says, without the resurrection, all of our faith in Christ means nothing.
Yeah.
So that's why Easter is so important to Christians. It really should be in a way, the primary holiday of Christianity. But I think just a lot of people don't give it much. They've been fooled by the whole accusation that Easter is some kind of, pagan thing. No, it's never been a pagan thing. Sure, some people eat chocolate and have bunny rabbits around, but this doesn't mean that's where it really comes from, or that's what Christians celebrate. Many of us call it Resurrection Day, so that kind of makes it much clearer what we're talking about. We've actually decided in our family to celebrate it a little bit differently, which is to say, make it more explicit about what Easter really is. We don't have bunnies. Like, we're okay with chocolate and eggs because, an egg is kind of, it's a nutritious package of food that has symbolic meaning. And also it makes me think of the tomb. An egg makes me think of the tomb, when a bunny doesn't do that for me. So, an egg is at least something that is, I think, a more universal symbol of new life. So, but more importantly, like, that's just what I tolerate. But what I really want to talk about with Easter is the fact that, what Christ does for us is to fulfill all of these prophecies that let us know the heart of God the Father. So the heart of God the Father is for us to be restored with him in the garden, for us to have our new life in him. And so our new life isn't just, you die and then you get the afterlife. No, our new life actually consists of a new place. We're in a new place. We're in a new body. We have a spiritual spiritual lifestyle. We have, there's a kingdom that we're serving in. And all of this is tied to the Spirit. So, when you hear scientists talk about how we might have multiple dimensions, Christians have been talking about this for thousands of years. We know it as the spirit world. So, and even people who aren't Christians know about the spirit world. So it's not like some kind of Christian conspiracy or something. It's nonsense. Like, people have known about the spirit world for millennia. And so this is a spiritual, Christ called it before he left, he called it a spiritual kingdom. He says, my kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. And so when people asked why he was leaving, and they asked the nature of why he had to do all the things, is because, well, my kingdom is a spiritual kingdom. So a lot of people just don't understand that, and that's okay. Like, he's keen to invite you to understand what that means. But basically it's a realm in which black is black and white is white and up is up and down is down. It's a world in which everything is clear what the truth is. Everyone knows who's in charge, and that's God. So, but in our world, it's like a simulation. It's like things don't look the way they really are. Things fool you, right? When Adam bit the fruit, she thought it was good for her, but it wasn't, right? So this is because she was looking with her fleshly eyes. She was seeing things in a fleshly way. She wasn't seeing things in a spiritual way. So this was beginning the separation of her connection with the spirit world. And the spirit world just is the truth. And the fleshly world is more of like a shadowy reality, right? It's would some in the Bible, would they describe it as like a veil, like that's covering our eyes, like we don't fully see, and then the veil is removed in the spirit world. Yeah, something like that. So his kingdom is a spiritual kingdom where the veil is removed. But also we live in a new body. So that means our bodies will be like Christ's new bodies. It says he's the firstborn of a new creation. It's how the Bible describes it. And that means Christ has made a new creation, and this is the new body, right? Our old body was good, but it's fallen into sin and decay. So now the new body doesn't do that, right? And yet it's a physical body. So some people would say this is not possible. This breaks so many laws of physics, right? I mean, they really would say this. They break so. What about the law of entropy? Well, where does that law come from? So, you have to understand that when you're talking about God, he is in the code. Like he can mess with the code. So that means that special code that they found recently that tells your body when it's time to die, he wrote that code. So did you know that in the Bible it already says how long we're supposed to live? Like God decided there's a number. He's like, oh, I'm not going to let them live past this number, So like all this stuff's written down. It's all in his code. And he when he makes a new code, like instead of putting a number, he puts there's no number there. Like we live forever. So he just removed that part from the list. So from the text box, there's nothing there. So now like with this new body, we will literally be here on earth with a new body, like Christ when he returned, right? It talks about how he returned. People couldn't always recognize him. He could go through walls. He could eat. He enjoyed food. And so the new body has a certain control over the physical that we don't fully understand. And I think some people kind of depict these things in movies sometimes, kind of horror films sometimes, or even superhero films, things like this. This is what we're talking about. Like, this is not just a fantasy. This is something that's based in reality. And so, if God gives you this power, you have it. Like you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to think, oh, have I done enough to deserve this? No, you haven't. Like, you have to stop thinking that way with God. It's not about merit and
Yeah.
doing enough for God, right? It's about love.
Yeah.
If you love God, God says, if you love me, follow my commandments.
Yeah.
So if you love God, that's what you're going to be wanting to do, is you're going to want to please God. So when you sense the love of God, that's something he's reaching out to you. He wants you to respond to that. So I know we're doing church pretty early on. We do this sometimes. If this bothers you, that's fine with me. I don't mind. I don't mind if
It's
it.
Jesus. We're talking about Jesus.
I don't mind if it bothers you. Enjoy it. Enjoy it.
Yes. Enjoy it.
Yeah. Um, enjoy being made uncomfortable by God.
Enjoy
It's
it.
good. I assure you, it's good for you. I assure you, it's good for you. So, yeah.
Well, you're talking about joy. You said enjoy it. And I just keep thinking about that today. Like, just, for the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and now is seated at the right hand of the Father.
Yep.
And, it's when someone does something, an incredibly grand gesture of love and for you, it's good to be aware of everything that they went through, to give this gift to you.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also good to just enjoy it. It's also good to just appreciate the gift and just say, wow, what a display, what a gesture of love. You're talking about bodies, and God became a man. God came down to join us in our humanity. And
Yep.
man, when he made creation, he made Adam and Eve, and he said it was very good.
Yeah.
And he loved his creation so much, he wanted to join us here where we are. It's the ultimate empathy.
Yeah. Sometimes when my kids kind of, they're having trouble, maybe they're angry, maybe they're sad, maybe we're even having a disagreement or something, what I try to do is I try to stoop down to their level.
Yeah.
Right? And, obviously it's a little different between God and us than it is between us and our children. Like, God is a God. We're not gods as parents. But that says something, though, doesn't it? It's like we're trying to follow in God's footsteps. When Christ stooped down to our level, when he became a man and humbled himself, it's kind of like that, right? And you know what I find immediately, they kind of lighten up, my kids. They kind of lighten up and they start to calm down. They're like, Dad cares about me. I think they can immediately sense that I care about them.
Yeah.
And I want to hear what they have to say, And so I think that's very valuable. Like, and part of it for me is just to teach them also how to talk to others. So, because, when you get angry, you have arguments, you tend to just kind of talk around or over or, talk at somebody instead of kindly talking to them or respectfully talking to them. And so, when I do that, it's modeling it for them so that they know how to do it to other people. They learn immediately, like, well, even if someone's wronging you in some way, you can still kind of sit down and relax and breathe and get on their level and say, hey, what's up? Or can we do this, or can we do that, or how do you feel about this? And so you're immediately doing that, and that's kind of what, like, God teaches us all these things. Like we don't, it just doesn't come from nowhere,
Yeah.
So Christ has taught, like the New Testament talks about men and how men are the head of the household and how they offer their bodies for their wives and their families. So like that's why men go to war, right? So we have to go to war to defend our families, and we have to recognize every day that we might die for our families. And so we get that from somewhere. That doesn't just come out of nowhere. That comes from Christ who died for us on the cross. So,
Yeah.
and as a result, he gets to be head of the church. So
Right.
he suffers for the church and he becomes head of the church as a result. He humbles himself to death, and then God says, well, now I've given him all power and authority because of that.
Yeah.
So the same kind of modeling happens in the family and in the church. So this kind of beauty is what comes out of seeing the gospel in action, right? So it's not just about knowing a little bit of scripture or going to church or anything like that. It's about knowing the real meaning of the gospel. So the gospel message is, and that's why I'm an evangelical, is to me that the gospel message is the most important message of the Bible. And if you're not emphasizing the gospel message, to me it's like, what are you talking about in your church?
Yeah.
You're talking about a lot of other stuff that doesn't save people. It might sound good to you. It might sound really holy and nice and respectful and kind to other people. It might even sound political or whatever. But it's not really what God's asking us to talk about with people. He wants us to talk about his son, talk about what he did for us, talk about sacrifice. These are
Yeah.
things that really affect people and change people. Not like what kind of clothes you should be wearing or something like that. Like, like, oh, ladies, you should be wearing this. So that's not what church is about, you know? So, church is about the gospel. And, so,
Amen.
so that's kind of what I'm trying to emphasize on Easter now for us.
Yeah.
So, should we talk about the ways we're changing Easter for our family?
Yeah, absolutely.
Go ahead, just see if you remember.
Yeah, well, let's see. I'm mostly thinking about what we did today, which is that we found this like really cool. It's sort of like on Christmas you have a manger scene. Where
Mm-hmm.
we found a empty tomb scene,
That's right.
and it's been really really cool because um, we need to paint it. It just came like plain white, so we needed to paint it, and so the kids, we have this tomb, and it's really pretty cool the way
It's
it's
great.
made. Like this little door opens, and when the door opens, it says, or it's not a door, it's the stone, but
Yeah.
inside it says he is risen. And then on the other side, there's like a tree, and there's like a place where Jesus like prayed in the Garden of Gethsemane. And then it also
Yeah.
comes with these little figures, and it's got Jesus on the cross, and it's got Jesus resurrected,
Mm-hmm.
and it's got a Roman guard, which I think is really cool, and an angel, and it's got Mary, which is just like my favorite story when Mary is there, and she's like thinks she's talking to the gardener, and she's like, "Where did you put him?"
Yeah.
And Jesus is like, "Mary," and she realizes it's him, and I just love that story. But I gotta say, I hope this is okay to say,
Of
you know,
course.
we ordered these came from Utah.
Yeah.
So I'm guessing that these were some Mormon families. This is on Etsy.
It could be.
And I mean, if that's the case, I just gotta like applaud you guys, because like why is this not a thing? Like, why is this not a normal Christian thing? We have a little nativity set for Christmas, like, I don't know. I think sometimes we get a little bit, like you've talked about before, um, in Christianity there can be some skittishness towards imagery of Christ.
Right.
But anyways, so that's exciting. We're going to do that Easter morning.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to do some readings from the story, the resurrection
Well, we're
story.
going to have the basket, right? The traditional, like what
Yeah.
we tend to do this. So in a way, we didn't change that, but we changed some of it. We didn't have as much. We don't have like the Easter bunny. We don't have like all the egg stuff, but we
Yeah.
did. We do still have the Easter basket.
Yeah.
And then we do have chocolate eggs or whatever, but we're also going to put like readings in the basket and a character, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that means each
Oh,
kid gets a little character, and the
yeah.
reading is like their character's story, like it's what they say or their part in the story of Easter. And
Yeah.
so each person, each kid gets to. We're going to kind of go around and like read this script, sort of. I don't know if you've ever done if you're a film person, but you do table read, so all the characters talk, and then one character will talk and then the next person on the line talks, and they kind of have this little drama with each other, and it's just kind of fun to do that before you
Yeah.
actually film. This is kind of like that. It's like everybody will get to kind of read their part, and it's basically enacting the Easter story after Christ died, like on the third day, and they go to the women go to the tomb to prepare his body and with spices and things, and he's not there, and so these group of characters show up. One of them is actually Christ, but they don't recognize him, and they think he's the gardener, and another is an angel. Like I think is it two angels? Um,
There's a few different versions of it. One
yes.
says there's, an angel at the head and the foot, and another version just kind of says one angel.
Yeah, which I would guess there's two actually,
Yeah.
and then one just got missed in the other account,
Yeah.
or they didn't think it was important to
You
say
didn't notice
two.
the other one sitting
Yeah,
there.
he's just shocked. Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. I
One
mean,
angel was all he needed.
that makes sense. I mean, people think this gives the Bible, it like makes it invalid in some way. Actually, no. That's actually how real personal accounts work with people, because if you've ever like I didn't work in law, but I studied law, and one of the things you learn almost immediately when you study law, when you study like if someone goes on a stand and testifies over what occurred, they have to give a record from their memory, and they say this almost unequivocally: people will be incorrect in their memory. And so what you have to find is like a preponderance of evidence, and you're getting to the point where there's like a lack of doubt. If you're in the jury or whatever, like okay, I have less doubt now, about what I think is true here. But you can almost never get to the place where all witnesses are going to say the same thing. Like almost never does that occur. In fact, they'll even say if the witnesses exactly corroborate each other, that likely means they're collaborating and lying. That's actually more likely. So,
That's interesting.
so the
Wow.
truth is actually that people will give slightly different accounts in their memory. And that's just kind of
Yeah.
how our memory works. Our memory is just not as perfect as we like to think it is.
I just love that.
Yeah.
I grew up with this idea that it had to be so perfect. It had like almost robotically perfect. And then when I saw that there were differences in the accounts, it like kind of I wrestled with my faith a little bit.
Sure.
Like, well,
Yeah.
aren't they supposed to have seen the exact same thing? And how can this be the word of God and everything? But more and more, I just see God just loves our account of Him.
It actually bears more resemblance to a true account. Like as you
Absolutely.
study it, you're like, this is actually like a true account.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
the subtleties in how we see Him and experience Him
Mm-hmm.
are important. Like the one person, maybe he saw two angels because
Yeah.
he was searching, like he was looking,
Mm-hmm.
and the other person, maybe he saw one angel because he was overwhelmed because he was worshiping. And these
Yes.
kind of details are important to God. I find.
Yeah, and often people are focusing on different things. So,
Yeah.
you see one angel and you're focusing on that angel. You're not seeing anything else.
Yeah.
And other people, they're more like information gatherers. They're like, oh,
Right.
what else is going on here now? And so that's just different kind of people have different kind of memories. They'll focus on, some people will focus on smells or colors or textures, or other people, they'd lose all like detail. They
Yes.
become very like emotional when they think of memory.
Yeah.
And then when your emotion comes in, then your other things seep into your memory. Like now you're thinking about something else that happened in your past that wasn't even part of that event.
Right.
Like, and so now you're imagining the smell of roses or something, and that has nothing to do with that particular event except the fact that your mind made a connection.
Yeah.
There's beauty to all of that.
Mm-hmm.
But these accounts bear more resemblance to true accounts that in which people are just encouraged to speak the truth instead of like encouraged to be like embellish or give some kind of set up some kind of false story. You
Yeah.
know, I think the Babylon Bee made this funny video, by the way, in response to the idea that the disciples stole his body
Oh,
so they could falsify his
yeah.
resurrection. And it was really funny because they were like, here's how it goes, guys. We find his body, we capture it. Of course, the Roman soldiers, I went to convince them somehow. We take his body, and then we all die horribly. It's going to be great. And everyone's like, yeah. And then John is like, are you serious? Like, what's in it for us? Like,
Right.
how is this? How is this a
Oh,
positive
yeah.
development?
Good point. Good point. Yeah.
You
Like we
know?
all die. We all die gruesome martyrs deaths. Yeah.
Yeah, like nobody even likes
For
us.
what?
Yeah, for a lie. So, instead, what you get is different disciples with different accounts, but they all kind of point to the same truth, which is that Christ really was this guy.
Yeah.
Like he really was the real deal. So the resurrection kind of proves that. Another that he was God, because you can't really kill God. I mean, don't make me laugh. So so another prophecy was that Jesus would preach to the people in Abraham's bosom, the place called Abraham's bosom, which is actually a portion of hell for God's special people, because heaven hadn't been opened yet. So like the people before Christ, if they were worshipers of God, they would go into the afterlife and they would wait in Abraham's bosom, right? Well, the prophecy was that they would be preached to, and they would be preached to by the Son of Man. And
Uh-huh.
this is literally what happened, is that when Christ died, he went down there to Abraham's bosom and he preached to them and told them that the promise has been fulfilled and that he was the one to fulfill the promise.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
just like how he preached on earth to his disciples and to the people here, he preached under the earth to
Yeah.
those people and restored all of them and brought them into his kingdom and fulfilled all those promises as well. So,
Yeah. He did.
yeah. So, I mean, he's got this solution for all of us. I mean, if you just don't understand some of this stuff, that's totally understandable. You don't have to understand it. It's not like we understood all this stuff from the beginning, So, but what is fascinating and wonderful is that whenever I feel doubt or whenever I feel fear, whenever things aren't going well, God gives me some new truth that gives me confidence in Him.
Awesome.
And that new truth is often some fact like this of what the
Yeah.
resurrection is about, or what God came to do, or that the fact that He won't let one of His lost sheep go. He'll leave the 99 to go get that one lost sheep.
Yeah.
So that's the kind of God He is. He's the true God. He's not a fake pagan God, who doesn't care about you, just
Yeah.
wants you to kiss their feet. No, instead Christ teaches us to kiss other people's feet. Like that's, you know what I mean? Like, because we love people, we're supposed to love people.
Yeah.
So, this is not about subservience, like it's about true love for people. And if even one person can be helped through this, good. Like that's the kind of people who have truth and who actually have real love. Is the people who actually have skin in the game and will fight for that. So, when I'm feeling doubt and fear, that's what he does for me. So he really cares for his children, and he cares for Hollywood. Okay, so
Yeah.
a little segue. Okay, we're going back and talk about Hollywood.
Nice.
So this report that I mentioned before by Film Threat and by Film Industry Watchdog, I think they're called, .org. They talk about how Hollywood is suffering greatly now because they don't have jobs. Hollywood has decided, partly because of the strikes, to eliminate many projects. I don't remember the percentage, and it depends on the studio. So anyway, so there's kind of a something around the number of 25%. Like, I don't remember what it is for every studio, but there's a large number of productions that they are eliminating. And this isn't just to say that they're just going to be eliminating those. No, they're changing how they do things. So that means a lot of other productions that are stateside will also be lost, more than 25%, because they're moving a lot of those other productions overseas or with runaway work, or they're just buying IP, so foreign IP. So they're not going to be worrying so much with you American filmmakers. And Chris Gore from Film Threat felt the need to say, well, I don't want to say I told you so, but I kind of told you so. Like, this is kind of what we've been talking about for like a year or two. Like, Hollywood is crumbling before our eyes. And so the question for us is, can Hollywood be resurrected? Can Hollywood be fixed? Of course, many people are going to have many different theories on this. I'm not a full-time film person anymore. So I can see that a lot of people would not trust what I have to say. If you're working in LA right now, you're working in Atlanta or some other, New York City or somewhere, like, you're probably going to be skeptical of what I have to say. But what I've discovered, and this comes from trying to work with product in Hollywood, going to AFM, meeting producers, what I can tell you is that Hollywood itself is the problem, which is to say how Hollywood is run. And it's I don't mean that in an overt way, although now it's become much more overt, but in more of like a gatekeeping way. Hollywood has kind of created its own problem. Also, additionally, the problem with China and Chinese money, it's really watered down the vibrancy of American art. So Americans, we don't make art the same as we used to. Art is not propaganda. Propaganda is not art. So propaganda cannot be cinema. Like, you cannot be having this other interest in your scripts. Like, who am I going to offend in my script, while at the same time thinking that you're making art? That's not how art works. Art is actually meant to offend people. I don't know if you knew that. Art is the opposite of what many people in Hollywood are making. Like, people in Hollywood are trying to not offend people, and they don't understand that that's the opposite of what art is supposed to be. I'm not saying you're supposed to always offend people with art, but that should not, my point is, it should not be a factor in making art, which means you're generally going to offend somebody. So if you're actively trying to not offend anybody, you're really watering down your stuff, and to me that's more like propaganda than it is like art. So my point is that, listen, you guys haven't been making good art anyway in Hollywood. Hollywood is not going to be able to make good art. Sure, a lot of the craftsmen shine, a lot of the craftsmen still make incredible work, But art is an innovator's game. So if you're innovating, and I mean that with storytelling too, not just with technology. With storytelling, if you're not innovating because you're not wanting to offend anybody, well, that's the problem, isn't it? So innovation is encouraged through freedom. Freedom, Americanism. This is why America, it's not really rocket science, okay? America has First Amendment rights. We have the right to offend people. As a result, we made the most vibrant art in the world. And our film industry blew everybody out of the water. Why do you think that is? Because we know how to shoot a camera really well? No, it's not why. It's because we have freedom of speech. It's because we have freedom of thought. It's because we have a multicultural society with lots of different stories embedded in our cultures and subcultures. That's why we water it. We water it down when we start to remove those things.
Yeah.
And now it becomes like this yucky cardboard tasting thing. Sure, you can look at your eyes, and you can be like Scorsese says, this is a theme park ride. This is fun, right? I'm really getting stimulation here, and there is an art in that, right? And you're editing, you're creating a beat by beat this beautiful kind of musical experience. But like, what about the storytelling? Isn't art really supposed to be about storytelling? And when all those cylinders are hitting right in this machine, now your true potential shines, right? This is not happening, I'm sorry to say. And it hasn't been happening for some time. So, Hollywood is suffering under its own kind of closed-minded thinking. And in my view, I felt too gatekeeped whenever I went to Hollywood. I felt like my interests could not be served there. Because I was always trying to make something new that would shake up something. And I just like doing that. Like, it's interesting to me to do that.
Yeah.
But it's true that if you're starting out, a lot of people just aren't going to believe in you. And that was the case for me. So, I'm still trying to make stuff that shakes people up, but because I like it. But yeah, it does mean it's going to be difficult for a lot of people to tolerate. And to me, that's the idea. Like, that's kind of why I do it. So, I think my time will come, and people will be ready for something new at some point. And then they will be surprised when they see my stuff. But in the meantime, I think I want to give people advice that you need to believe in yourself well enough to say, listen, if I'm going to keep making film and I'm going to keep trying to make good stories, I'm going to have to understand that the best way to do this is outside of Hollywood. And this is the best time right now that exists. Right now is the time to leave Hollywood and keep making stories. I don't mean leave Hollywood and leave storytelling, leave filmmaking. No, I mean stay in filmmaking and make film better than Hollywood can make it. That's what I mean. Now, how are you going to do that, right? You have to team together with other people like you who've suffered in the same way you've suffered and who see stories in a new, different way that Hollywood cannot tolerate, right? So now is your chance to do something that's unconventional, that shakes things up, even if it just ends up on YouTube. That is a victory, okay? Because what it does is it says, dude, Hollywood, YouTube filmmakers are doing better than you. Like, that's actually a statement. That's an important thing to say. So, but you don't have to settle for that. There are studios like Angel Studios. There are studios like The Daily Wire. There are studios like Blaze Media. There are studios like Epic TV or like Lore TV or faith-based stuff. Or there's independent studios, other independent studios that are doing things outside of the Hollywood way of thinking. And that's the important thing, is the Hollywood way of thinking. You have to stay away from Hollywood money, stay away from all of these gatekeepers, stop trying to get funding and publicity the way Hollywood does it. Just stay away from it, you know,
Yeah.
because they will try to shut you down. So you have to shake things up from outside of Hollywood. Get together with people through social media, say, let's get together, let's look at this script, let's make this happen. And
Yeah.
even more than that, even more than saying, let's stick it to Hollywood, right? What are the best ways you can stick it to Hollywood? Make the opposite message that Hollywood wants you to make. On purpose.
Yeah.
Say the very thing that they would shut you down for last year.
Yeah.
Because you can. And you know why? Because it's more evidence that Hollywood is crumbling, and it will make Hollywood crumble quicker. And that is what you want, because when it crumbles quicker, Hollywood can break up and the studios can return back to normal. But you want it to crumble first. So be part of it crumbling, and maybe in 5 years you'll get your job back and more. Because you'll be the new paradigm. You'll be the new guy who Hollywood went, oh my goodness, like a vampire. They're like, oh, the crucifix, oh, right? That's what you want. You want them to be scared of you. Because in 5 years you'll become the hero in Hollywood. Going, thank God for you. You were part of that whole uprising against Hollywood that taught us a lesson, that said, you know what, good stuff can be made outside of Hollywood, and we admit it now. I mean, there's technology now, and I'm not talking about something like the volume on The Mandalorian. No, the volume's almost yesterday's news now. I mean, like, there's stuff on Unreal Engine you can do that's shocking. I mean, I want to make a film on Unreal Engine now. But this is like technology from gaming, from gamers, that's being refitted for filmmaking. And so basically, if you don't know, it creates a virtual set around your actor while you're filming them. And this is just rendered in. So it's like a superior blue screen. It's not rendered in after the fact. It's rendered in while you're shooting them. And even more than that, it's not a computer-generated set. It's from set photos and video you've taken previously. So this is a real set that's being inserted behind your actor, which really exists. And it's done in real time with your actor there while they're performing. So, I mean, this is like shocking technology to the people who have never used it. You know, that it's not even AI. Like, this other stuff I think could change things even more than AI, because AI is still going to be like done in the style of AI. You know, it's got its own unique style. That we're seeing that's the case, at least. And, you know, people can identify AI stuff by running it through a computer, and they can say, yes, that was AI generated. So people will know what AI is. You know, it'll be like, this is AI film and this is non-AI film. Like, that's how it's going to be seen, very likely. My point, and I'm not against AI, I'm not saying AI won't be incredible, I'm sure it will be, but you know, I get more interested in the traditional forms of filmmaking, and Unreal Engine to me is like, it's like traditional filmmaking on steroids. It's just like, wow. So, but then, you know, even traditional filmmaking is going through a streamlining process where it doesn't have to be shot like a Marvel film. It can be shot like the film The Creator where it's just done with a little more efficiency, right, on set. Even that you can make a very efficient, Star Wars level production for less than 100 mil. I mean, that's like a third of the price of what Marvel would do. So, these things are very possible in the indie space. I'm talking about in the indie space where you don't have studio funding, right? You've got more like Angel Studios, right? Angel Studios is like crowdfunding to the max, right? And so these things are possible, and you can do it outside of Hollywood, and it will teach Hollywood a major lesson, you know?
Yeah.
So, but do I think Hollywood will resurrect? No. I really, I really don't. Like, I think it's
Yeah.
done for. I really do. Which means it's better for you if you take my advice. Go outside of Hollywood. Get embedded in an indie studio or an indie production company, even if it's just your own production company. If you have to do commercial work as well, good. Like, it'll be good for you. So, don't fret. Think about real storytelling. What's the best kind of storytelling you always wanted to do, but Hollywood wouldn't let you. There you go. Like, that's what you fight for. So that's my little bit of advice, my little bit of hope
Yeah.
to all of you out there.
I love it. Encouraging. Very cool.
Thank you. And that's what I'm trying to do as well. My
Yeah.
my hope is to, I don't have like some kind of major platform like these people, these other alternative film people have, like Angel Studios or like these other studios I mentioned, Daily Wire. Yes, it's true. I'm speaking to a lot of filmmakers here. Most of them will not like to hear the words Daily Wire. They don't want to. They're not conservatives. This has been much of the problem in Hollywood, is this kind of visceral disunity between these two political sides. Like, let's stop doing that. This is not about that. This is about good film. This is about good storytelling. And,
Yeah.
we need to make. I mean, if you've ever watched any of the Daily Wire's films, they're not overtly political at all in their films. They're
Yeah.
just trying to make good stories. So, sure, Terror on the Prairie was not the best Western I've ever seen. It wasn't bad, though. It wasn't that bad. And I think they should have kept making Westerns to get it right, to make better, keep making better stuff. They should have just kept doing that, you know. I mean, the studios, that's often what they do, right? They'll get a good IP or a good like formula for making a good Western. And then this producer becomes an expert at it, and they're like, I'm just going to make another one of these every year. We're just going to make another one and another one. And we're just going to keep pumping them out. If I was DW, that's what I would do. I'd be like, bro, you've got a great model. I'm going to keep giving you funds every year. I don't care if the film does well or not. Here's your funds for this year. You get it. You get $1 million every year. Bam, bam, bam. Just keep putting out Westerns. That to me is what we should be doing, you know. So, teach DW a lesson. If you're Blaze Media, if you're Epic Times, somebody, one of these other conservative outlets, if you're faith-based, try to make a model like that where you can just keep making content and keep shoving it out, because filmmakers often they need to get past their first few bad films before they really make some really decent films with like pathos and meaning in it, and where everything else is done like perfectly, the lighting, the action, like it's done like at the correct beats. I mean, and then the beauty of it is then you start like finding and discovering great talent. Like that to me is like really great because the actors then become the marketing tool to make this happen, you know, and to keep discussing, like you could keep discussing good westerns and what makes westerns a vibrant genre of American cinema. You know, like why do we not have an actor who's just like, I'm just going to keep making westerns over and over? Like that's what we need, you know. And we also need the Dirty Harry films. Like why do we not have someone just, I'm just going to keep making Dirty Harry films? You know, like these genres, you know, are like really, they would be really vibrant right now if someone just started plugging away at these.
Yeah.
You know, and not necessarily that expensive to make either.
Yeah.
You know, we're talking maybe 20 mil. You know, for an action, that's pretty decent. You know, you
Right.
can make that back. Um, but I mean, yeah, sure, we're gonna need investors, stuff like this. But I will tell you, like, if you look past what people have said about Angel Studios, you look past some of the lies you hear, because most of it's just a bunch of accusations. Um, you know, that's my opinion. If you look past a lot of that stuff, Angel Studios, I think, would do really well if they got an action film and they put it in theaters. I
Yeah.
think it would do really well. You know, if they did a western, it could even do better because a western has room to breathe a little bit, and
Right.
which faith-based film tends to breathe a little bit and get a little dramatic. Westerns can do that, right? You get a moment
Yeah.
in a western where you have a vista, and then you start talking about the meaning of justice or something, and it's
Yeah.
just like it's so appropriate, you know. When you can't really do that in like a Dirty Harry film, like that just doesn't work,
Right.
you know. So these are ideas that we need more of, and we need people like committing to them and going and making them.
Right.
And you know, it's not about resurrecting Hollywood at that point. It's about resurrecting good American storytelling
Yeah.
and teaching Hollywood a lesson that they can't just keep ignoring all these problems, hoping they'll go away. You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
I had this story idea
Yeah.
a long time ago that I don't know if I'll ever write it, but it was this idea that what would filmmaking look like right now if we started from scratch? And it was sort of inspired by, you know, I had heard that there was some conflict between the French New Wave filmmakers, and so it was sort of inspired by that. And
I
just
remember this idea.
Yeah, yeah, just that there were these people who lived like in farms,
In
or they
farms,
just kind of lived out in the country,
and they would screen their films in barns and stuff.
yeah, and everything
Yeah.
was very like low tech, but still, you know, they're still able to make films, possibly using real film, possibly using digital. I wasn't quite sure where it was going to go with that.
Mm-hmm.
And then they were like fiercely competitive, and but they would create like really raw, like human um, films that were just, they really just drew people in. And then there would be some like
Drama between people.
yeah, some drama, and then there were some like Patreons.
Oh yeah.
Patrons. There we go, patrons. Who, you know, benefactors who lived in the big city, and they would kind of, you know, they felt that they had some
Something special
monopoly
there.
on this new young artist, so they would kind of give them money to do what they needed to do, and but everything was very like old and dusty, and
I love this story.
yeah, it's such a fun idea. What would that look like? You know, without all the special effects, you know, without all the computers.
Without Hollywood to worry about.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly, without an agenda, without, you know, yeah.
It's a great story because it doesn't have to be literal. It can be very symbolic.
Yeah.
It can be kind of symbolic about like a what if scenario of like if Hollywood had disappeared tomorrow, what would artists just living wherever what would they do?
Right.
Like the real scenario that would take place is like a very decentralized scenario of small communities of creators, and then they get together to screen, and then in order to screen their production, oftentimes they are screening next to somebody else who's screening, and so you'll have these little, almost like little festival moments
Yeah.
where the actual filmmaker is there and they're screening in a barn and there's like 50 people in the audience, maybe like on a good day. Generally it's like 20 people or 15 people. And like, but this is where they get their entertainment. So there, a lot of people are going to be there, like clockwork, you
Yeah.
know. And so like,
Right.
instead of like, there's people who sure they're probably going to go to their sports games, but there's other people who are going to go to just kind of like localized cinema. Remember when we went to the North Carolina and there was this really charming barn.
Hmm.
That's kind of what I thought of when you mentioned that. Like this,
Yeah.
it's like a bed and breakfast with like this very nice barn environment, and it was just like very charming.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And they would string up like Christmas lights and all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, it's
it's
like a
fun.
barn dance, except it's a film festival.
It's a film festival. Yep, with hay and with wood and
Hmm.
people
And
clomping around with cowboy boots and stuff.
a goat wanders in
Of
and is like,
course,
What are all you people doing here in
a
my
duck or
bedroom? It's time
something.
for me to go to bed."
Yeah, yeah. And there's always the farm dog making sure everything's okay. They're
Hmm.
like, I'm watching, make sure the duck stays out of here. I know he's gonna try to do something. Like he's always protecting, but then like sometimes he barks too much.
He's a good boy.
He's a good boy. We all love him, of course. Like he's the cinema dog or something. I don't know. But like that just sounds like such a charming idea, and it could be it could be emblematic of something that could actually happen in real life. Like
Yeah.
that really is like I remember when you came up with that idea. It was probably like 5 years ago or something, maybe longer.
Yeah. Longer.
And we were thinking, oh, this is a nice what if scenario, kind of like this fun thing to play with. But I didn't think that could really happen. And now I'm like, yeah, that could happen for sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
you know,
Wow. Yep.
and I wouldn't necessarily mind. You know,
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely.
but it does mean that the internet might not survive.
Yeah.
That's what it means to me. And that is a little bit terrifying to think that, like, that could be the case. But in some ways, I would like that. In some ways,
I
I think that
know.
would be the best outcome for our future is if we just torched the internet down. Like, that would be like,
I know.
so many
There was
things we worry about would be over with.
We were watching Willy Wonka the other night,
Yeah.
and
Gene Wilder is the best.
the original, and the main character Charlie Bucket is delivering newspaper,
Mm-hmm.
and he just this one lady, like, he throws it in the air, she catches it and looks at it, kind of like, oh, thanks.
Of
And I'm
course.
just thinking, like, wow, the simplicity of,
Mm.
like, anything you're interested in, anything you want to know is right there on that little piece of paper.
Yep, he just threw it
It's
at
not,
you. Yep.
yeah, it's not screaming at you. It's not like, I don't know. It's
Yeah,
not
there's
like
nobody
some
angry
kind
at
of,
you.
yeah, and there's not like infinite information available at all times. It's
Yeah.
just, you gotta know what you've gotta know because you can't look it up. And whatever you need to know that's going on in the world, you gotta trust this piece of paper that's telling you.
Yeah, that's the downside of it. Is like,
And that's it.
it's
Like,
probably not real.
it's a much quieter headspace, I think.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you'd have to. I think that could still happen, but you'd have to like these newspapers would have to gain serious trust with
Yeah.
people again, which they've mostly lost.
Yeah.
You know. So what would it take to regain all that trust the media has lost? Oh my goodness, I have no idea. I can't even imagine what they'd have to do. Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess the Epoch Times exists, right? Like they are a more conservative newspaper that actually makes a newspaper. And I actually
Yeah.
read it one time. I was a little bit impressed. I was like, this is actually a decent newspaper,
Cool.
you know? So I could see
Yeah.
that happening for sure. It's not like all the printing presses just blew away and went away. Like they're going to be there and they're just going to be sitting idle these days. You know, it's like I wish I could print something somebody would buy, but yeah. So it exists. You know, a lot of this infrastructure exists. You
Yeah.
know, people have like 16 millimeter film projectors in their attic. You know,
Yeah.
and or it could definitely still be digital, but I just think that the internet probably wouldn't exist. It would be like, you know, files on a computer, an old computer or something.
Yeah.
That's probably more like what would
Or
happen.
an old like jazz drive or something
I
that still
remember that.
works for some reason.
Oh my goodness. How many was it even megabytes? I don't even remember.
Oh yeah, it was such a
It
small
was so
amount
small.
to save a Photoshop PSD file.
I think it was like 1 megabyte or something, and people, oh my goodness, a megabyte. Now we're like,
Technology.
now gigs are small for us. We're just like, how many gigs? Okay, 150 gigs. Okay, that's fine. You know, like that was, oh my goodness, people couldn't even imagine that back then. That was when you were in video production
Yeah.
at Art Institute,
Yep.
and that was not cheap. I think that Jazz Drive was like, I don't know, hundreds of dollars.
Yeah, I think so.
You know, it didn't last very long, did it?
No, I mean, I used it. I used whatever it was I had. I had to buy it for something, and I used it. It was cool. And I think I only used it a couple of years,
Mm-hmm.
and then I just hung on to it for a long time.
In the closet.
I think it was purple.
Yeah, it was like a blue or purple color. Yeah, like clear plastic. It was kind of cool, actually.
Like an exciting color, like technology.
Mm-hmm. I
Technology is exciting.
I think they were trying to match the whole Apple design thing where they had used colored plastic in their computers. Remember was it like the first iMac or something?
Yeah, something like that.
Where they had these really colorful computers. I still kind of miss those.
Hmm.
But we never really bought one, did we? We thought
No.
about it a lot.
Yeah.
Um, but we invested in the Jazz Drive and camera equipment, which I think was a good move.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, big files, and but let this be an example to all of you children out there. Just like how a lot of this technology went the way of the buffalo, this is where Hollywood is headed. Like Hollywood is headed in that direction, and we're seeing it, you know, from a 40,000, you know, foot view. But I don't, you know, if you're in Hollywood, you're probably not sensing all of it. I don't know, maybe you're sensing it more than anybody, but you know, these things tend to have kind of like you know, a sense of doubt, a sense of like a veneer of like disbelief, where it's like, oh, everything's gonna be fine, whatever. Um, but you know, like a lot of people have lost tons of money on this already. They don't have jobs. Um, Film Threat just put this out, so if you look for the Film Threat video on, I think it's called Nepo Babies. A Nepo baby is a nepotist baby. You know, he's talking about the Nepo babies who are taking over
Oh
Hollywood.
wow.
Yeah. So what they're talking about is the people who keep getting hired by Hollywood now. The students out of film schools now, the DEI students, right? That check all the boxes that Hollywood wants to check. Now, this week, next week it'll be some other box, and these are the people taking all the jobs from everybody else. Like the people who actually make good films, the people who have been making films for 20, 30 years. The Nepo babies are getting their jobs. So, like this is what that video on Film Thread is about. So I would check it out. But yeah, we celebrate Christ's resurrection on Sunday, and we'll have family over, and so we also will celebrate when Hollywood is in ashes, and that's okay, because that's not the people. That's the system. That's just not working for any of us. We want the people to have new jobs working somewhere else, making actual art that matters, not just art that some Chinese censor wrote out on a sheet of paper for them. So let's do that instead, people.
Yeah.
So where can people find you, Rebecca?
Well, I'm here on X as When We Love Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
But you can also find me on Facebook and YouTube at Rebecca Loves Jesus.
Yep.
And then you can find me on Instagram at Jesus Loves Rebecca.
That's right.
Where can people find more about what you are doing, Jon Croft?
I'm here on X under Jon Edward Croft, or Cultural Warfare with Jon Croft. I'm on YouTube as well. You can also find me at MediaMoses.com. I'm the head writer there, and at The Media Moses. So I hope you enjoyed our episode about the demise of Hollywood. Thanks. And stand up for the culture! All right, guys. Love you guys, and enjoy your Easter this year.